Kumlen and Ablak Gemara. Today's daf is Daf Tzadik Gimel Amid Aleph from Masechta Yevamos. Just a quick recap. Rav Yehuda came along and said the name of Rav that if a woman husband died childless, she has to marry her brother Yevama. If she goes out and marries a stranger, it's an avera. Comes along Rav Yehuda name of Rav and says that the kedushin, in fact, is not even a valid kedushin because it says in pasuk like tiyeh. Eishes and Meisa Chutzah means no kedushin at all. And Shmuel says he's not 100% sure whether Latia means it's an Avera or whether Latia means there's no kedushin at all. Then we learned that another Rabbi Yana came along and said that we all decided to agree with Rav that kedushin is not teifus at all. Came along Rabbi Yechanan and he brought a proof from a Mishnah, which we'll come back to, and that is that if a person talks about the future after I become Jewish, you'll be engaged to me or that kind of stuff, it's not a valid engagement. And then the last case was if a person comes over to a woman and says that after you receive chalitza from your brother-in-law, you'll be engaged to me, it's not mekudeshes. Rabbi Yechanan says, what's the possible reason? The reason is because there is no kedushin. If he wanted to marry today, it wouldn't have been a valid kedushin because she has to wait for her brother-in-law first. There's no kedushin to a stranger. Came along Rish Lakish, he says he disagrees. He holds that kedushin might be effective by Yevama, but according to Rabbi Akiva, holds even if you're doing an avera of a lav, kedushin is not effective, and that's why the Sholem Mamzedim, the author of this Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. But according to us, where by lav and kedushin is effective, so too would be by Yevama. And so they said to him, it can't be that the author of the Mishnah Rabbi Akiva, because the rest of the Mishnah talks about a davar shalom la'olam, something that hasn't happened yet. But Rabbi Akiva holds that it's still valid. That it is good. We brought a proof from a woman who tried to forbid her husband from having benefit from her future earnings. So the Rish Lakish said that's not a proof at all because what she banned was anything coming from her hands, and her hands are present right now. So Rish Lakish understood Rabbi Akiva holds that a davar shalom la'olam is not kaina, and the reason that's why the chalitza, the woman over here by the Yevama, the kedushin is ineffective because it goes according to Rabbi Akiva. But according to us, kedushin will be affected by Yevama. And the only way the Shlokish learn that is if you learn Rabbi Akiva holds a davar shalom la'olam is not kaina, and that's what we are going to talk about right now. It says the Gemara 5 lines from the top. That's how the Gemara Aleph upliga. This argues on Nachman Yitzchak. What do you mean argue Rav Huna holds like Rav, and Rav holds like Rabbi Yanai. These are all teachers of each other. And Rabbi Yanai holds like Rabbi Chia, and Rabbi Chia holds like Rebbe, and Rebbe holds like Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov holds like Rabbi Akiva. The Amar, all of them say Adam makna davar shalom la'olam. And Nachman Yitzchak understood that all of these people, including Rabbi Akiva, hold that a person can make acquisitions or make transactions, even though it isn't here right now, but we'll talk about it in the future. And and this argues with Rish Lakish's understanding. So now we're going to go through each one of these Amoraim, why he thinks that these Amoraim hold. That each one of these hold that a davar shalom la'olam can make a kinyan. Rav Huna, Mayi, what's the Rav Huna? The what we learned. He sells the palm dates to his friend, but they haven't arrived yet. This is winter time and there's no fruits on the tree. Amar Rav Huna says, well, actually, as long as the dates haven't yet come out, emerged, everyone can change their mind. But once they emerged, you can no longer change your mind. Why? Because the kinyan now took place, even though at the time it wasn't present. So we see that a person can be makna davar shalom la'olam. We're bringing proofs that Rabbi Akiva and all those who follow him do believe that a person can transact something in the future. Nachman says, Nachman says, even when it emerges, they can change their mind till they actually takes it. And why is that? Because there's no kinyan that happened. There was nothing for the kinyan to be chala. There's nothing there at the time. And Rav Huna says that the people are there, and that's good enough. The people involved in the transaction are there. There is actually a machlekes if you can transact for an Uber as well, for someone someone that's not around. But in these cases, both people are around, the buyer and the seller, and therefore that's called bola olam. The object you're talking about is not bola olam, it doesn't matter. And the other one says no, if the object is not here, there's nothing happened. So that's one. So that's an Rav Huna. Then we continue. Sorry, skip. So Nachman said you can always change your mind. But Nachman said, but I will agree with you one thing. If the buyer went ahead and grabbed a hold of these dates and ate it, the seller can't say, hey, the kinyan whenever it was a kinyan, give him back my money. No, because you made a kinyan, and if he grabbed it, it's his. Taking more further, Rav, how do I know Rav also believes you can sell, you transact something that's not present? Rav said, who's the name of Rav? If somebody says to a friend, so does you see this field? Right now it's not mine, but I eventually will buy it. When I will purchase it in the future, is yours from today. It is kind. I made a transaction by the future, and it's still a valid kinyan. Now, Tezeri has a long discussion. Others showing you why do you have to add the word ma'achshav? The word ma'achshav makes it present right now. I'm saying whenever I buy it, it becomes yours as from today. If by saying from today, it makes it actually present. Why do you need ma'achshav? The whole idea of Doshel B'Olam is the object's not around. It doesn't matter because whenever it comes around, the kinyan will be chal then. So why do you have to add the word ma'achshav? So Tezeri goes through an interesting thing that most fields are not bought with money. Most fields are bought with either a contract or kinyan chazaka. The problem is whenever you buy the field and then we say the transaction takes effect, where's the kinyan? The kinyan is no longer present. So therefore, we need, that person who's taking it from me, there has to be some kinyan, even though it's lebal olam. And the problem is, if he makes a chazaka today, comes in 30 days from now, when I buy the field, for example, the chazaka is gone, and the shtar might be ripped up. There's nothing left. So therefore, I have to add word ma'achshav that the kinyan you're doing now should have effect. When it comes to money, interesting, even the money has disappeared, it's still considered as if it's there. Why is that? Because if you don't give me the field, I gave you $100 for the field and today. You don't have it yet, but I gave you $100. That's the kinyan. Comes in a year from now when you buy it, if you no longer have that $100, then you owe me $100. And that fact that you owe me $100 makes it as if the money is there right now, because now you're not going to pay me because you're giving me a field instead. So as if the money is still present. So therefore, that's why it's considered bal. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. So now we know who hold that a person can make the dosh of then we'll continue. Rabbiane had this sharecropper. He counted the pay. He had a sharecropper. They used to bring him a basket full of fruits every Friday afternoon for Shabbos. Very nice. Call Ma'ala Shabbat every Friday afternoon. Now, it was one Friday, it was delayed. And the problem is, once it comes Shabbos, he brings me food. I have to give him truma ma'aser. Rabbi give truma ma'aser, but Shabbos he cannot give truma ma'aser. La'asa and didn't come. What did he do? Shakal aser pay the base alayu. So he took from his own fruits in his house. He took some set aside and said, "This is going to be the truma and the ma'aser for the basket that will eventually come. The basket's not here right now. It's a loy bala. And yet the truma ma'aser took effect. So we see that you can make a kinyan transacted for something that's loy bala. Also, the Kamarachi came from Chia. Amalei said, "Shapir Abed, yes, did I do the right thing? The Trumaisa valid." He said, "Yes." The Tanya we learned. It says in Pasuk regarding Shabbos. It says, with regarding Trumaisa, it says Laman Tilma. You should learn Liyidas Hashem Elkecha to fear Hashem. Kol Hayamim, all the days. What do you mean all the days? Eila Shabbos including Shabbos and Yom Tov. What do you mean? Be careful to make sure that before Shabbos and Yom Tov, you take out the Truma Ma'aser so that you'll be able to have a good Einik Shabbos. You'll be able to have a good pleasure. Says the Gemara, Lamai Hilchasa. Why exactly does the Torah have to warn you about Shabbos? Is it coming to tell you that what? That on Shabbos itself, if you don't have what to eat, go ahead and give the Truma Ma'aser on Shabbos itself. Why can't we give Truma Ma'aser on Shabbos itself? So Gemara says, but it's a crow. You need a pasuk in Mishnah till Rabban. The whole Isser of giving Truma Ma'aser on Shabbos itself is only midrabanan. What exactly is the Isser? So some say the Isser is makabe patish. And somehow or another, they fit it into the words tiltul derabban. Tiltul derabban usually is an expression you use for muktzah. You're moving it to Rabbanon. In other words, it seems from the Gemara here, the Isser of giving Truma and Ma'aser is because since it's Tevel, you cannot eat it, then it's Muktzah. Anything you cannot eat is Muktzah, just like you have food in the freezer, frozen food in your freezer, which cannot be eaten on Shabbos, is Muktzah. This is Muktzah, you cannot eat it. So therefore, when you move the Tevel, then to take the Truma and Ma'aser from it, that is Muktzah. So we ban it even if it's you're taking Truma Ma'aser somewhere else on this. Whatever you're taking it from, that is Tevel. So that becomes Muktzah. That's what Tiltul Rabbanon sounds like. Others say that it's a Toy Maka Patish. Adaneza says that it's when the Rabbanon, it's almost like Boirer. separating the good from the bad and so on. So, but whatever it is, it's only Asher Rabbanon. Why would the Torah come along and tell you you're allowed to do this on Shabbos? Why would it be, from the Torah's perspective, there's no prohibition in the first place? So it must be the Torah telling you, the Torah telling you that what? That Torah telling you that even if the food is not here yet, go ahead and give it Truma Maisa so that you'll be able to eat it when it comes. So clearly, there's nothing wrong in this case. It sounds like you can make transact about something Shaloi Bala Ilam. So the Gemara, he tells her, Rabbi Yanni got a little bit scared. He said to Rabbi, I had a dream last night. I had a dream last night. The words that you broke the reeds, as if I did something wrong. Why else would I dreaming that pasuk? Maybe this is which pasuk do we have those words in? Maybe it comes in the pasuk that you relied on a broken reed, but you relied on a stick that is a broken reed. What do you mean you relied on? In other words, the heter that I used is no good. Isn't that what the dream is telling me? Hazeh, this one. So Yebchi said, you're right about those words, but you used the wrong pasuk. This is what the pasuk says there. A broken reed do not break further. And flax that is dim, do not extinguish it. Why? Because the end of the pasuk, which is the most important part, Le'emes yaitzi mishpat, that your mishpat came out true. On the contrary, you did the right thing. Okay, so we see that both of them hold. You could transact about Lo'ilim. Tanya, we learned Loisazgi. Okay, Rebbe, how do Rebbe? The time we learned Loisazgi Ever Ladoina, do not bring back an Eved to his master. He escaped, do not bring it back. So Rebbe said, what's it talking about? But like Eved, let's say you purchased a slave in Eved Kanani. I'm not sure he intended. What intention was, you clearly said, I'm going to liberate you. That's what we're talking about. What do you mean? So what can't you do? Hey, what are we talking about? He said to this slave, I want you, I'm making a contract here. I will buy you. I'm making a contract with you. As soon as I purchase you, I want you to buy yourself. In other words, you're emancipated. So we see clearly from here again, what? At this time, he was still a slave. And yet it takes effect as soon as he bought him. So we see that you can transact for the future. A maid, now we learned. A man says to a woman, the guy who had yesterday. The man says to a woman, after I become Jewish, you'll be engaged to me. This guy knew she was not Jewish. He said, after you go through the conversion, I want you to be engaged to me with this ring I'm giving you today. So it's about the future. After I'm set free from being an Nebuchadnezzar, after you're set free from being in the Shivcha. You're a married woman, but after your husband dies, he's dying. I want this ring I'm giving you today to be Kiddush. It's his wife's sister. He says, after your sister dies, I want you to be married to me. After your brother-in-law gives you your chalitza, I want you to be my wife. Eina Mekadesh is in all of these cases, she's not Mekudesh, not Mekudesh at all. Meir says Mekadesh, the Meir says Mekudesh. So we see clearly from here that Meir holds you can transact for the future. Cases and all the trying to ask a question. It says in the Gemara there in Git and other places that even the Meir says that you can transact. An object is not present, but you cannot transact to someone that wasn't present. Someone wasn't born yet. Let's say inside the mother's womb. You say, well, when you grow up, this will happen. That you cannot do. So if the person is a goy, and I say after you become Jewish or after I become Jewish, we'll be engaged. The person of the yid doesn't exist. So Torah says, yes, that's considered existing. The physical body is here. And even though spiritually the person changes from a goy to a yid, that's not called a lidava shala. That's a dava shabbat. Because the goof is in the world. Yeah. Another thing is in Hamafkid, when it talks about dava shalai, there it says that when do we say that you can transact something in the future, something which is inevitable to happen? Like the first case we had, Peter's Dekel. The tree every year gives off, dates. It's a date palm tree. Every year gives off dates. Just what? It's winter season. It's not here right now. So you can transact it because you know it's definitely going to happen. It is already a connection. But something that you don't know is definitely going to happen, you cannot transact till it actually happens. So all of these instances here, for sure the person will go through the bezin, let's say, will accept the conversion at the very end, or maybe this person will change their mind. Nothing here is inevitable. So how come it says here, according to the Meir, all of these cases, they are Mekudesh? So Taisa says, because when do you need to apply the rule that it has to be inevitable? It's talking about a case where the object is not here at all. And because the object is not here at all, the only way that we can say there's a kinyan is if you know for sure the object eventually will come here. But here the object is here. The person going through the conversion is the object. That person is here. So then we don't need it to have to be inevitable because there's already somewhere for it the kinyan to latch on. Somewhere the kinyan to latch on. Okay, let's continue. Telling about it further, and Rabbi Ben Yaakov, he said, also believes in these transactions. He said as follows. Im Ammar, he says, pay this arugazu tlushim. See this patch of fruits over here? This is now ready for Truma Maisa. You Truma. I want it to be Truma. I'll pay this aruga. I want it to be Truma on this other fur over here, this patch over here of fruits, which are mechaborim, which are still connected. And we'll see in a minute, they're not a third ripe yet. So because they're not a third ripe yet, it's not considered really crop until it's a third ripe. So therefore, it's as if it's non-present. Or I paid a sort of mechaborim, or I'm going to use these attached fruits to become eventually to be truma. I'll pay the tuition on these other fruits over here sitting that are detached. So right now they're not a third ready, but when they become a third ripe. The yitlashu, he cuts it, shlish, and so if he cuts it, or if it became a third and it was cut off, his words go are effective. So we see clearly right now there's nothing here because whatever's growing, it's attached. It's not a third ready yet. So it's not yet chayiv. It's not considered a fruit or a crop. And yet, because you said that, whenever it happens, it will eventuate. Again, Rabbi Kiva himself. Rabbi Kiva is what is the discussion we had yesterday. This is the proof that Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak has. Rabbi Kiva holds you do transact Dov Shel Olam, which Reish Lakish and Abu Yeshua said no, it's not. It's not. We learned Koinim, a woman says, I ban Shani Oitzel Lefich, everything that I earn should not go to you. It should not go to you at all. Now she didn't earn it yet. It's about the future. So it says that the husband doesn't have to know the vow because it's not a vow. It's not an effective vow because it's about a future event. Rabbi Kiva says, Yafeh. Yes, you do have to effect a vow. You have to make a vow. Why? Because Shema Tadif Olav Yesim in her because maybe she will earn more than is suitable for him. And therefore, whatever that will become forbidden to him. That which belongs to him, she cannot ban. But the rest, if he gives her food for $100 a week and she earns $200 a week, that extra hadafa is hers. And if she made a ban that it's forbidden to him, and he would take it. But if she makes a ban, she has a right to interdict against that extra $100. Therefore, he should annul the vow, even though it's about the future. So we see close from here, Rabbi Kiva holds, you can be makna a dover shaloi bala olam. However, the Shlakish and Abu Yeshua says not at all. They say that what she's doing is she's placing a vow on her hands. Anything that the hands produce will be forbidden, and the hands are present right now. Nothing to do with Dover Shalabah, and that's the argument. Okay, back to the Gemara. They asked Rav Sheshes the question. We learned before in the Gemara in the Mishnah that if an Eid Echad comes along and says your husband died, she does her homework, she can then marry somebody else. But what happens? We're talking about a brother-in-law. If the husband is dead, she has to marry a brother-in-law. Can a single aid be effective and tell her, yes, your husband died, and now she can marry a brother-in-law? Now the question is as follows: time of the aid, why do you believe a single aid when it comes to marrying anybody? Is it mishum the milsa? Why would the guy lie? Tomorrow, what's the aid saying? The aid is saying that the husband died. What happens if tomorrow the husband appears? The aid would not come to a proper court and say testimony if he wasn't convinced 100% that he's saying the truth, because he knows tomorrow he can be caught out, and there goes his whole credibility. He won't lie. Is that the reason? If that's the reason, the same thing applies to Yavama. Same thing here. He said your husband died. She should be able to marry your brother-in-law because the aid knows that he can be caught out tomorrow. Is that the reason? So it makes no difference, and we believe him. You know what the reason of a single aid is? Because it's not so much we're trusting the aid, it's more that we're trusting her that she will do her homework because she knows the consequences if she marries somebody else. And it turns out to be her husband's alive, then she has to leave the other person, her husband, and all the children of Zaydim. So therefore, she will do her homework. If that's the reason, maybe with her brother-in-law, she's not going to be so faru, because maybe she loves her brother-in-law, maybe she wants to marry him, and the first excuse that she can marry him, she's happy to jump at it. So therefore, we shouldn't believe that. Because they're close, they know each other. It's not like a stranger you didn't know yesterday, but it's somebody that you know, and it's your brother-in-law. So maybe she won't take it to do her due diligence properly, and she'll marry the guy. So maybe we shouldn't trust Eidech. Which one is it? Amru Rav Sheshes said to the Sud, didn't we learn the Mishnah? We just learned before. Amru, they said to her, your husband died, your children died first, or your child. Then your husband, which makes you That means the husband, now you're chayiv to marry a brother-in-law. But it's Yabmasha, so you married a brother-in-law based on that testimony. Then afterwards, Umrah, they came along and said, hey, Chiluf Atvori made a mistake. It's all the way around. In fact, your husband died first, then your son, so you have no right to marry a brother-in-law. In fact, you're living in sin. So should we say, we say you have to go out, Bavlad, Rishon, the children you had before you knew about this, and if you continue living with him, then Mamzedim. What actually happened here? On what basis did she marry the brother-in-law? And then on what basis does she have to leave? If he's 2 witnesses came along and said your husband died, so she married the brother-in-law. And then following year, 2 witnesses come along and say your husband did not die. So 2 against 2. Why should she leave the husband? Why the children mamzedim? If anything, they're a suffix mamzer. How do we know which pair of witnesses we should trust? My chazid is some Kadahani. Why rely on the second pair that her husband's still alive and she suffers all the consequences? So my Kahani, maybe the first pair is telling the truth that she had a right to marry a brother. So what's going on? If that's the situation, the scenario, it doesn't make sense. And furthermore, mamzer, you're telling me that her children are mamzedim. Why? Suffix mamzer. You don't know the mamzedim. Maybe her husband is dead. You don't know who to believe. And if you can tell me, no, the Mishnah is not being particular, it said mamzer, it really means something mamzer. The Mishnah is not, delineating all the details. But Militani say for later on in the Mishnah, it says Harishan mamzer for Achane mamzer. If they told her, she married a brother-in-law, and then they told her that when you married, your husband's still alive. But what do you call it? But now your husband is dead. So we say that any children she had prior to that are mamzedim. Any children she has post that are not mamzedim, even though she should be divorced. But if they continue living, they're not mamzedim. So we see the Mishnah is being very pedantic here. Exactly when they are mamzedim, they're not mamzedim. So the Mishnah would have told us if it's a suffix mamzer that it's a suffix, not a real mamzer. Shmamina, Dafkin, Tony, everything is very particular. So this is the case. Obviously, that couldn't have. It's not what happened 2 against 2. Because then why would the Mishnah come out so strongly? Why believe the second pair more than the first pair? I'll tell you what happened here. One guy came along and said your husband died, so she married a brother-in-law. And we learned in the Mishnah one age is good enough to marry a stranger. So from here we see clearly from the Mishnah that to marry a brother-in-law also 1 is enough. So therefore, and what happened was 2 then came along and said, hey, your husband is actually alive. 2 against 1. Of course, we believe the 2, and that's why she has to leave him. That's why the children of Zaydim and so on. So, the only reason why her whole life is messed up is because 2 came along and contradicted. And had it not been for that, the single aid is believed. So, Rav Sheshes clearly brings a proof from here that a single aid is believed not just for a stranger, but even for a brother. That's one version. Ikidami, another version, that's not a question that the single aid is believed. What happens if there's no aid? But the woman comes along and says, my husband died. We allow her to marry her brother-in-law because she knows the consequences if she's not telling the truth. So therefore, we learned the Isha Shamra, if a woman comes along and she says that Mes Bailey, my husband died, to not say she'll let her marry. But anybody, Mes Bailey, because she knows the consequences if she's lying. What happens eventually? Her husband comes back. Mez Bailey, she says, my husband died. But she marries a brother-in-law. So therefore, if a woman who has a vested interest is believed, surely a single aid is believed. Kita Bailach, my question is the Mishnah Yavam Alma, the other way around. A single aid comes along and says that that you should know that your husband died and your child died after your husband. In other words, you're free. You're no longer a Yavam. Do we believe a single aid in that case? My time this is the question. What's the whole reason why we're bringing a single aid? Because he knows he can be caught out. In this case, also maybe eventually somebody saw that the kid ran around after the husband who didn't run around. Once you talk about facts, there's always somebody out there who might contradict what you said, who might know it differently. So the aid is not going to lie; he must be telling the truth. So therefore, we believe in this case as well. The aid is telling you that the child died, your husband predeceased the child. So therefore, you're a free woman. We believe. The whole reason is from the daika mitzvah because she's very careful. But about the whole daika mitzvah here, she's so happy to get out of this, to be a free woman. Well, maybe she doesn't like her brother-in-law. The misnu, maybe she hates her brother-in-law. The son, because she got to know her brother-in-law very well. She doesn't like his character, doesn't like him at all. So maybe at the slightest pretext, she'll take advantage of it and leave. So maybe we cannot trust that she actually did her homework because she just said, the Bezdin said it's good enough for me. So the question is not about marrying a brother-in-law based on that single aid. The question is whether she can set herself free based on single aid. So now the discussion is very similar. We learned by the same bishop again. They told her husband died, then your son died. So therefore she's a free woman. Then he says she marries. And Mishnah clearly talks about a case where they're setting her free. You don't marry your brother because there's a child after your husband died. Then after they told her that it happened exactly the opposite of what we told you. So this is the opposite case, not the case we brought before, but this is the opposite case where your husband died first and then your son, so you're a free woman, and then they swap things over. Tater, she has to leave the second husband. All the children of Mamzeh. Now we asked the same question we asked before. Hey, what actually happened? Because we are now messing up her life for good. That means we believe the new ages that appeared here. What are we talking about? Elaine, but today, two came and said you're a free woman, then two said you're not. My chazid is some kahani. Why rely on the second pair, not the first pair? How do you know which way to go? Maybe, and now that she's married, let her just say stay married already. And we had it before. Once she did, she did it. You have to get out of it. But furthermore, mamza, something mamza. Also, why are you relating the children of mamzedim? They're only doubtful mamzedim. We don't know who to believe. And the Mishnah is not being particular. Because in the next case in the Mishnah it says harishan mamza va'achar ain't a mamza. If they told her the husband when you initially got married, the husband was alive, but now he's dead, and therefore the children they initially are mamzedim, now they're not, which means clearly the Mishnah is being very careful. Shmamin on the daf kitani, we're telling you exactly the way it is. Elalav, isn't it? Chad Elalav. We're talking about what happened was a single witness came along and said that your husband predeceased the child. The time of the Osubay today, and what happened was that two people came afterwards that contradicted. After that, Mehemen, otherwise we would believe a single aid. So we clearly see from here that a single aid is believed to set her free. Says the Gemara. From here is no proof. I can tell you today. So in this version, we conclude no proof. To say that an aid is believed to tell her that you can marry brother-in-law, the first version, yes, we'll bring that as a proof. But to say that an aid is believed to set her free, I will disprove it. You know why? Because you know why in this case over here, the woman we believe, maybe we're talking about two and two. And your question was we're talking about two. No, the one we never believed. Two witnesses said you can marry a stranger, and then two came along cannot. So why do we believe the second pair rather than the first pair? Because we're talking about not that the second pair contradicted the first pair. The second pair was mazim the first pair. Mazim means they say to the first pair, whether it happened or not, I don't know. What I do know is you weren't there at the time. And the Torah then tells us, the Torah then tells us that we believe the second pair because what they're doing is not challenging the testimony, they're challenging the credibility of the Eidim. And the Eidim cannot defend themselves because they're in a gay bedar, because they have vested interest. They can't say, oh, no, we're honest. Talking about yourself. Two against two. We're talking about Eidim, the second group found them liars. We're talking about they were found liars. Okay, so therefore, this version, when it comes to an Eid Echad to believe regarding freeing her to marry anybody, we have no proof that we believe them. So we still remain with a question, which we'll continue with tomorrow.